Hello, I'm Triple314 and I'm going to be demoing LackeyCCG and the Star Trek Customizable Card Game 2nd Edition for the Mike Watches community. When you first open LackeyCCG, it'll ask if you want to see some tutorial videos. These are really great and they'll show you all the features, but we don't need them right now. Lackey comes with a sample plugin called War 3000. Each plugin is a game. We don't want this one, so let's go to the Plugin tab. I've already copied the auto-update URL, so I'm going to click here to paste it, and then over here to install it. This should go right the first time. If it doesn't, then you can click install again, and it'll download the files that it missed the first time. Here we go, it installed properly, as you can see by this pop-up coming up. If it doesn't install properly, then it'll just stop displaying text, and you can click that again. So let's load the plugin. I'm going to be playing this game against myself offline, but I'm going to start by showing you how to set up an online game. So normally we'd go and click on the Server tab, but since we haven't set this up, it redirects us to the Preferences tab. The one thing in here we have to set up is our player name. I recommend making this the same as your Intense Debate name, and then be sure to hit save. Now we go to server and connect to the game matching server. Alright. Now there's a list of people here. If we want to see just the people with this particular plugin, we click here. There's me. And oh, I guess I've already clicked over here so that we only see Star Trek games. You can go and see all these other games. Probably most of these are Magic, but there could be some others. Alright, so you can host a game, and the videos have some information on this. You can click on a game to join it, but we're not going to be using that this time, so I'm going to log out from the server. Alright, so in order to load a deck for the first time, we need to go into the deck editor. This allows you to create and edit different decks. We don't have any recent decks yet, so let's go to Browse, and I'm going to load the original series deck. So I click on it and then click Choose. And then there are a couple of ways to load this to our game. One is just to click Load Entire Deck to You. Okay, so we've got our game. The first thing we want to do is set out our missions. We'll have exactly 5. I'm going to put Earth on the left here. And so we've got Metron Arena, SETI Alpha 5, Transport Crash Survivors, and Geological Survey. Now I actually like to put them all more or less on top of each other, off to the side, except for Earth, our headquarters mission. That gives us more space, and the table can get a little bit crowded depending on how large your screen is. So, as we mouse over each of these different missions, they pop up over here on the left. And that's true for any card. So, let's see. So this is our headquarters mission. It lets us report our personnel and ships. And I'll get to all that as we go. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Hand tab. Oh, this down here, all these tabs represent different places that our cards might be on our side. So there's the hand, the deck, the discard pile removed from the game, our dilemma pile, our missions, which we just took out of. Hand dilemmas and bottom dilemmas have to do with when you're choosing dilemmas. and cruise is a quick place to put personnel to represent that they're on a particular ship without having to move all the cards around the table. You might notice that I've put all my cards on one side of the table, that way my opponent can have the other side here. I don't actually have an opponent, but just so that it looks proper, I'm going to keep it that way. Okay, so I've gone back to the hand tab. There are a bunch of buttons here of things we can do. Obviously draw is one of them. So we start the game with 7 cards. That's 6, 7. Alright. So, over here is our different players. That's me, that's the test dummy, and the different parts of the turn. Let's start with the players. We start with 0 points, and each turn you get 7 counters. Under here is all these same places that cards can be are listed here, but abbreviated. So H for hand, and 7 to show there's 7 cards in there. The deck has 28, and so on. You can also see this information for the test dummy or your opponent. These are for going through the different parts of the turn. Every time you go to the next phase or turn, like this, it does an autosave, so I recommend using these. Alright, so we essentially just went through one turn for us, and I'm going to skip through the test dummy's turn. Actually, you can go back turns too. Well, let's start our first turn, but first I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. I don't need to see the log that big, and this way we can see more of the table. Alright, so we actually have to draw all 3 copies of the Enterprise. We only need 1, but let's start there. Ships are one of the most important parts of the game because otherwise you can't get to your other missions and solve them. So I'm going to play the USS Enterprise to Earth. Earth says you may play TOS cards, non-aligned cards, and equipment at this mission, and USS Enterprise is a TOS card. It has a special ability here. I'm going to ignore all of the original series special abilities. It'll make the game simpler to think about if we're not having to track, do we want to use this ability, do we not? And I recommend that for your first couple of games you do the same thing. Just pay attention to the costs and the skills that your personnel have, and the attributes down here. So just what you need to solve the missions. Okay, so the Enterprise costs 3. So there we go. If you hover over counters and press the down key, it'll bring that down 1 time each. Same goes for points. Those go by 1s, 2, even though the game goes by 5s. Alright, so I have 4 counters left. Janice Rand plays for free, for 0, so sure, I'll play her too. And sure, I'm going to play Spock also. He also costs 3. So that's the down arrow key there. And the other thing you can do, if you don't feel like playing any cards, to spend these counters, is you can draw a card for 1 counter. So I'll draw a card and spend my last counter. Okay, so that finishes my play draw phase. Go on to my execute orders phase. Well, I don't really have much to do here either. The discard phase is if you have 7 or more cards, more than 7 cards in your hand at the end of your turn you have to discard down to 7. That's not a problem either. So we will go on to, well, turn 1 would be my opponent's. Go on to the next one. Alright, so what else do we want to play? I'm going to play, I'm probably not going to use this, but I'm going to play Final Cry. At least I'm not going to use it immediately. So, Final Cry plays in your core when your TOS personnel is about to be killed by a dilemma. You may discard 3 TOS cards from hand to stop him or her instead. Since I have these extra copies of the Enterprise, I might end up using that. I'm mostly playing it though to demonstrate the core. You can designate really any part of the table as your core, just anywhere out of the way. It just means that it's not at a particular location. It's not at the Metron Arena or at Earth, it's just on the table. Whereas the Enterprise, Rand, and Spock are all at Earth. Oh, something I forgot about last turn is that after you play personnel, you can turn them over. You have to show them to your opponent when you play them, but then after that they can be secret. In order to flip a card over, you hold the control key and click on it, and you can click on it again to flip it back. Now when you mouse over these cards, you can see what they are. But your opponent, when they mouse over them, they'll just see the back of the card. Alright. So, okay. Sorry, I've 7 counters. I'm not keeping track of this quite like I should. It's really a good idea to use these at least to start, especially with the TOS deck, because there's different ways that you can play this. Are you playing a card with its special ability or not? That way you can be clear to your opponent that you're just playing it without the special ability. Okay, so I've spent 2 this turn. I'd like some more personnel, so I'm going to draw and take down my counter. Sure, I'll play Dr. Noel for 2. And draw again, see what I get. Already got a copy of Spock. So draw one more time. And I can play Dr. Adams next turn. Alright. Execute orders. I've still got nothing I want to do. Discard. I'm good. Alright, my turn again. So, I'm going to play Dr. Adams. Oh, and flip Dr. Noel over. And Dr. Adams while I'm at it. And draw another card here. Sulk. Oh, I forgot to... I'm sorry. I'm not being a very good example. Reset your counters to 7. And pay 2 for Dr. Adams. Okay. So Sulk costs 3 more. So I'm going to play him. And might as well draw more, because Spock isn't going to do me any good. Okay, drawing costs 1, and then Matthews costs 1 more. Alright. And I'm going to flip these over, because I think I might be able to attempt a mission now. Okay, let's take a look at these. The easiest mission... I'm going to save that for later because it's so easy to get 16 different skills. Let's see if we have any other missions that we can attempt. The Metron Arena. So let's take a look first at our skills. We have 2 options here. Leadership, 2 Science, and Cunning greater than 32. So Leadership. Let's see here. We have leadership. We have 2 science. Spock has 2 science all by himself. And cunning greater than 32. So that's Janice has 5. Spock has 8 is 13. Helen has 6 is 19. Dr. Tristan Adams has 6 is 25. So Salk has 5, which makes 30, and Matthews has 5, which makes 35. Alright, that's greater than 32. So let's go there. I'm going to pull this out because I'm about to go to it. I'm going to move all of these to the crew tab, crew 1 tab, just so they're not in the way later. And so I've beamed them up to the ship. I'm going to move the Enterprise over and declare that I'm attempting this mission. I'm going to pause for a moment so that I can go set up the dilemmas on the other side. Alright, now we're looking at the game from my opponent's point of view, so all my cards have moved to the other side. I'm in the Hand Dilemmas tab, which is your hand of dilemmas. It's not that well named, but that's what it is. And I'm ready to draw some dilemmas. First I need to figure out how many I'm drawing. If I look over here at Tribble's stats here, I can see that in the crew tab there are 6 personnel, so I get to draw 6 dilemmas using the Draw Dilemma button. Don't get this confused with the Draw button. It's kind of easy to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so this is a planet mission. So the first thing strategically that I'm going to want to do is get rid of all the dilemmas that are only space dilemmas. See, that just shows space, whereas these are all dual dilemmas. They show both space and a planet. And I'm just putting it off to the side so it's easier to ignore. Let's see. I'm not going to go through all of my thinking here, but I know I don't want Conscious of the King. Alright. So, I can also play up to 6 cost. That's the same number as the number of dilemmas I drew. I know I don't want Swashbuckler at heart either. So let's sort the 3 of these that are left by cost. Alright. So, side by side, your opponent names a skill. Randomly select 2 personnel. Each of those personnel that has that skill is stopped. Casualties has consume 1, and the personnel who has the fewest skill icons is stopped. If that personnel does not have at least 4 skill icons, he or she is killed instead. Or Moment of Doubt. It essentially costs 3 because I'm assuming that I'm playing my Tribble is playing a deck with 1 headquarters mission, Earth. So it costs 3 also, and your opponent chooses an officer or security personnel to be stopped. I'm trying to remember what cards I've played, I as my opponent. Sorry if that gets a little bit confusing. I'm not sure about an officer or security personnel, but I do remember that Tribble played Rand, and Yeoman Rand only has 1 skill dot. Since they're attempting with, I probably only need to stop 1 personnel because they're attempting with 6, so I think this is the only dilemma I need to play. And if you are going to play more than 1 dilemma, you can set them out in a pile for your opponent to turn over, starting with the top. Oh, I'm sorry, I should explain what I'm doing here. As I click and drag, I can hit Control to flip it, and then let go, and it goes down face down. So you can create a pile. Oh, I did that wrong. You can create a pile like that. You're going to click, drag, and finally hold Control to make that happen right. Alright, for this one though, I think I just want to play casualties. Alright. So I'm going to go back to looking at things from my point of view. Look at my crew here. Okay, so I'm going to flip over this dilemma that my opponent's chosen. The casualties. Consume 1. Actually, I'm going to do this from my opponent's point of view. Consume 1 means that I'm going to grab a dilemma and put it under the mission. It's essentially been solved. Alright. Back to my point of view, let's look at this crew. Well, as my opponent guessed, I have a personnel with only 1 skill dot. So I'll reveal her. And this says, if that personnel does not have at least 4 skill icons, he or she is killed instead. Okay, Janice Rand is killed. She goes to the discard pile. I've finished with the dilemmas for this mission, all the dilemmas that my opponent set out. So let's see if we still have enough to complete the mission. I'm again looking for leadership and 2 science. I should still have, yes. So Salk has leadership, Spock has 2 science, and cunning greater than 32. Well, I don't think I'm going to have that. 8 and 6 is 14, and another 6 is 20, 25, 30. Alright. Just to be sure, let's check the other set of requirements. Officer, 2 treachery, and strength greater than 32. So Salk has officer. Tristan Adams has treachery, but I don't have a second treachery. Alright. So I've failed this mission this turn, but I got past essentially 2 dilemmas because Consume 1 got me another dilemma to put under here. Okay, let's go on to the next turn. Let's see, I still can't play Spock or either Enterprise because those are both unique. They have, I'm sorry I didn't address this before, they have a little uniqueness dot here. Not every card has a uniqueness dot. Here we go, Matthews. Just represents a generic background personnel. He doesn't have the uniqueness dot, and so I can have any number of him out on the table at once. Versus Spock or the Enterprise, I can only have 1 out at a time. My opponent could also have 1 out, but only 1 for each of us. So I want another personnel out there. I forgot to set up my counters here. Up to 7, and then I drew 1 for 6. Christine Chapel. Alright. She's another warm body, which is basically all I need to solve this. So that's 2 more points for her. 2 more counters, rather. I've still got 4 left, so let's draw again. Robert Tomlinson. For 1 more counter. Sure, I will play him as well. And draw again. I can't play Gary Mitchell, so I'll just draw 1 final card. because Gary Mitchell costs 2. Let's move on to the execute orders phase. And in order to beam these 2 onto the Enterprise, I first need to move it back. So ships have 3 attributes at the bottom. Weapons and shields are pretty self-explanatory, but how those work doesn't matter yet. There isn't any battling in this game just yet. We haven't revealed those cards yet. So the important one is range. Range tells you how far you can go each turn. In order to go from one mission to another mission, you look at the span at the bottom here. Span of 2. Earth also has a span of 2. In order to move from one to the other, you have to be able to spend both those span out of your range. So that would be spending 4 range to go back to Earth, which is fine. USS Enterprise has 8 range. I'm going to click and drag to grab both of these and put them in my crew. And then since this has 8 range, I can spend the other 4 to go back to the mission and attempt it again. Let's have my opponent set up dilemmas here. Right, hand dilemmas. Okay, this time I have 7 crew attempting the mission, but I've already solved 2 dilemmas. 7 minus 2 is 5, so my opponent gets to draw 5 and spend 5. Okay, there are no space dilemmas here. Let's order them by cost. What have we got here? Royal Hunt costs nothing, but it has consumed 2. I don't think that's what I want. Trelane's Trial will definitely stop a personnel. I probably need 6 personnel to solve this mission. So my opponent wants to stop or kill at least 2. I think the way to go is to first play Moment of Doubt, because that allows my opponent will want to be able to choose somebody first. So any of my officer or security personnel can be chosen from, and then after that Trelane's Trial, which might be able to kill one of my personnel, although I get to choose who goes up against Trelane's Trial. So I want Trelane's Trial on the bottom, and Moment of Doubt above it. Okay, back to my perspective. Take a look at my crew and flip over the first dilemma. Alright, Moment of Doubt. Your opponent chooses an officer or security personnel to be stopped. So that's my opponent, the one who's playing the dilemmas. Let's look at who I have that are officer or security. I know I have... okay. I have Salk and Matthews. Salk has officer and Matthews has security. So my opponent's going to look at these and compare them to the requirements of the mission. And as my opponent looks at these, probably going to notice that Salk has officer and leadership, and I'm probably going for the leadership in 2 science. So he's going to choose to stop Sasalk. You can double click on any card to rotate it sideways. That's a decent way to show that it's been stopped. And put Matthews back into my crew. Okay. So Moment of Doubt goes under the mission. What's next? Well, Trelane's Trial. I get to choose a personnel that does not have an attribute greater than 6 to be stopped. So somebody with attributes all 5 or less. No. Robert Tomlinson counts. Alright, he's the only one I can choose, so I will stop him. And put that mission underneath. Oh, the other half of it says, if you cannot, for each headquarters you command, randomly select personnel to be killed. So fortunately for me, I could. Okay, so let's take another look at the mission and see if I can solve it now. I doubt it, but let's take a look. I need leadership. And I don't have leadership. So that's time number 2 is still not going to work. Alright, go to the end of my turn. I don't need to discard any cards because my hand is only 7. But I can bring these guys back into my crew because your crew, all your cards are unstopped at the end of your turn. Alright, on to my next turn. Okay, but I can play Gary Mitchell for 2. Oh, excuse me, up to 7 and then down 2. And so I have 5 left. Let's draw. Ariel Shaw, sure, I will pay 1 for the draw and 1 for her. Okay, I have 3 more counters, so let's draw again. Hey, I don't have Kirk yet. Alright, 1 to draw him and 2 more to play him. That's another source of leadership, that'll come in handy. I'm out of counters, so I go on to execute orders. Just like before, I'm going to move the Enterprise back to Earth, load up these guys into my crew. Okay, I'm going to take a quick look at what the lowest number of personnel that I can solve this mission with is. Okay, leadership and 2 science. Spock is my 2 science. And I'm looking for cunning, so between Kirk and Sasalk. Sasalk gets attributes +1 for each dilemma overcome beneath this mission. So he's actually integrity 9, cunning 9, strength 9. Okay. Okay, Spock has cunning 8, Sasalk has cunning 9, so that's 17. Who else has high cunning? Kirk has decently high cunning. Helen, Noel, Tristan Adams. Okay. So that's 17 cunning plus 6 is 23, plus another 6 is 29, and plus another 6 is 35. So I could attempt with these 4 personnel. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the rest of these back on Earth. And take the Enterprise there with just these. Now the benefit of this is that now I'm attempting with 5 personnel, and there are 4 dilemmas under here, which means that my opponent will only get to draw 1 dilemma and pay 1. So they may not be able to play any dilemmas. Oh, I forgot to bottom these dilemmas. Okay, let's see what my opponent gets. Side by side, it costs 2, so they can't play it. They play nothing. So I'm ready to complete my first mission. I just have to prove to my opponent that I can beat it by showing him the personnel. And so they can take a look at that. And I can score 30 points. Just click on the point button to bring up the points and add 30. Since a game is to 50 points, that means I only need to beat 1 more mission in order to win the game. So any of these missions will do. And that's how the game plays. So I'm editing the video now, and I realized that I forgot a few things. First of all is actually a correction. I attempted this mission with 5 personnel, and I forgot about Transport Crash Survivors. Transport Crash Survivors says when a player's personnel begin a mission attempt at a mission worth 30 or more points, which this is, with 5 or less personnel, the player to the left of that player, my opponent, may draw 6 extra dilemmas and spend 6 extra on dilemmas. Basically, this means that you never want to attempt a mission with less than 6 personnel, and I just did. That probably would have made the mission go on for another turn, but I'm not going to redo it. There is a hard limit of 10 personnel on each mission attempt, so your range is from 6 to 10. I would just treat that 6 as a rule. If somebody attempts with 5, remind them nicely. I also glossed over a couple of things. First of all, with ships, in order to move them, you need to have your ship staffed properly. So in this case, you need a gold command star and a silver staffing star. I had Sasalk, for example, has the gold command star, and Dr. Helen Noel has the silver staffing star. Spock also has the gold command star. Most personnel do have one. Now the gold command star can stand in for the staffing star, so Sasalk and Spock together would be able to staff the Enterprise. But Drs. Noel and Adams each have a silver staffing star, and a gold command star is required for the USS Enterprise. You also need at least 1 personnel aboard who's the right affiliation, so Sasalk doesn't count because he's non-aligned and all the others are Federation. That can be one of the same personnel that is supplying a staffing icon, and without these staffing icons you can't move the ship. So if enough of your personnel get killed, it's possible that your ship might not be able to move, and in order to get more personnel in, you'll have to draw another one. I also want to talk a little bit more about what you need to start a mission. All you really need to start a mission is a personnel of the right affiliation. At the bottom of each mission is a description of who can attempt this mission. So any affiliation except for that icon may attempt this mission. This one here says any affiliation at all. To solve SETI Alpha 5, you need a non-aligned personnel, and there's a bunch of options for geological survey. SETI Alpha 5 is an example where this deck might not always be able to attempt it. If you don't have Sasalk or Vina, then you can't even start the mission, even if you're able to pass the requirements. Now, speaking of those requirements, you don't actually need them to start the mission. You don't have to prove to your opponent that you have them. you can bluff. If you have enough personnel that you think you can bluff your opponent, go right ahead. But then when you finish all the dilemmas and you're ready to complete the mission, you need both the mission requirements, so leadership, 2 science, and cunning greater than 32, and you also still need to have a personnel of the right affiliation. So going back to SETI Alpha 5, if Sasalk had been stopped, I might have all these biology, geology, leadership, medical, and cunning, but still not be able to complete it that turn because Sasalk had been stopped. The other thing to know about missions is that whenever you finish an attempt, whether it's successful or not, all your personnel are stopped. So you can't attempt anything again with that crew. They also don't count as being part of a ship's staffing. So if you wanted to move the ship back to Earth, for example, you wouldn't be able to do that unless you had some personnel that were not part of the mission attempt. For a planet mission, you can beam down a crew of as large or small as you want to complete the mission. But for space missions, everyone on the ship counts as part of the mission attempt, so your entire crew would be stopped whenever you attempt a space mission. All of your personnel are unstopped at the end of each of your turns, so the next turn they'll be unstopped and you can use them again. So I hope you'll give the game a try. I've had a lot of fun even just demoing it for you.